The Lost Painting. Emily Cooper was an aspiring artist struggling to make a name for herself in the bustling city. Each day, she worked tirelessly in her tiny studio apartment, her canvases reflecting her deep passion and creativity. But the art world had been unkind to her, leaving her unnoticed and her works unsold. The bills were piling up, and her motivation was slowly waning. It was during one of her routine weekend walks through the city that she found herself at a flea market, hoping to find something, anything, that would reignite her spark. The market was a chaotic maze of vendors selling everything from antique furniture to vintage clothing. Emily loved browsing through the stalls, often finding solace in the stories behind the old, discarded items. As she wandered, her eyes caught sight of an old canvas, tucked away in the corner of a stall filled with dusty picture frames and forgotten trinkets. The canvas was large, nearly as tall as she was, and its surface was worn and cracked with age. There was something about it that drew her in. The painting appeared to be unfinished, its muted colors barely hinting at the landscape it once depicted. Emily asked the vendor about it, but the old man simply shrugged, uninterested in the piece. $10 and it's yours, he said, barely glancing at the canvas. Emily hesitated for a moment, then handed over the money. She wasn't sure what she was going to do with it, but she felt an inexplicable connection to the piece. She carried it back to her apartment, struggling up the stairs with the cumbersome canvas in her arms. Once inside, she leaned it against the wall and studied it carefully. The faded outlines of a field and a distant sky were barely visible beneath the layers of dirt and time. Over the next few days, the canvas sat untouched in her studio. Emily found herself constantly drawn to it, her thoughts consumed by the possibilities of what it might become. Finally, she decided to do something with it. The original painting was too faded and incomplete to salvage, but she could use it as a base for something new, something that would reflect her vision. With renewed energy, Emily began to paint. She chose bold, vibrant colors, hoping to breathe new life into the old canvas. But as she worked, something strange began to happen. No matter how much she painted over the original image, the landscape underneath started to re-emerge, becoming clearer with each stroke. It was as if the old painting was fighting to come back to life, resisting her attempts to cover it. At first, Emily was frustrated. She had wanted to create something entirely her own, but the original painting seemed to have a will of its own. Gradually, her frustration gave way to curiosity. She became obsessed with uncovering the hidden image, spending hours in front of the canvas, slowly bringing out the details of the landscape beneath. The faded field of flowers burst into bloom, the stormy sky darkened, and a solitary figure began to take shape in the distance. As the figure became clearer, Emily felt a deep connection to it. The man in the painting stood alone in the field, his posture weary and his face hidden in shadow. Something was haunting about him, something that spoke to the loneliness and struggle she had been feeling in her own life. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that this was no ordinary painting. It was a masterpiece hidden beneath years of neglect. When Emily finally completed her work, she was stunned by what she had uncovered. The painting was far beyond anything she had ever created, its beauty both haunting and profound. The original artist's talent and vision shone through every brushstroke, yet there was a part of her in the painting as well, a collaboration across time and space. She decided to share her discovery online, posting a photo of the painting on her social media. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Art critics and collectors praised her for her restoration of the lost masterpiece, and soon her phone was ringing off the hook with offers from galleries and buyers. Overnight, Emily's life changed. She was no longer the struggling artist in a cramped apartment. She was the woman who had uncovered a masterpiece. But with her newfound fame came an unsettling feeling that she couldn't shake. As much as she tried to enjoy her success, the painting began to haunt her in ways she hadn't expected. At night, she dreams of the man in the painting. In her dreams, he was always just out of reach, his back turned to her as he stood in the field. She would call out to him, but he never responded, never turned to face her. The dreams left her feeling drained and anxious, a heaviness settling in her chest that she couldn't explain. As the days passed, Emily started to hear faint whispers when she was alone in her studio. The whispers were soft at first, just on the edge of her hearing, but they grew louder each day. They seemed to come from the painting itself, a low, mournful voice that filled her with dread. She tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination. But the feeling of being watched, of being judged, only grew stronger. Desperate for answers, Emily began researching the history of the canvas. She visited libraries, combed through online databases, and even consulted with art historians, but she found nothing about the original artist. The more she searched, the more she became convinced that the man in the painting was the artist himself, trapped in his own creation, waiting for something or someone. It was during one particularly restless night that Emily had an epiphany. She realized that the original artist's spirit was haunting her, seeking recognition for the masterpiece that had been forgotten for so long. The man in the painting wasn't trying to frighten her. He was asking for her help. With a sense of urgency, Emily returned to her studio. She placed the painting back on her easel and stared at it, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't keep the painting as it was, claiming it as her own. It wasn't right. The artist's voice had been silenced for too long, and it was her responsibility to give him the credit he deserved. Taking a deep breath, Emily picked up her brush and began to work. This time, she didn't paint over the old image. Instead, she carefully restored the original painting, bringing out the details that had been lost to time. She worked with reverence, guided by the spirit of the unknown artist until the painting was complete. When she finally stepped back, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The man in the painting now stood with his face turned toward the viewer, his expression one of quiet resignation. Emily knew she had done the right thing. The painting was no longer hers to claim, but it was finally whole. The next day, Emily called a press conference at the gallery where the painting was being displayed. She stood before the gathered crowd, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to speak. "I've discovered something about this painting," she began, her voice steady. "It's not mine. I merely uncovered it. The real artist is unknown, but their talent is undeniable. I cannot, in good conscience, take credit for this work. This masterpiece belongs to them." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Some in the audience looked confused, others impressed by her honesty. But Emily didn't care about their reactions. She had done what was right. She had given the original artists the recognition they deserved. In the weeks that followed, Emily's decision was met with mixed reactions. Some praised her integrity, while others criticized her for ruining her own success. But Emily didn't mind. She had found peace in knowing that the painting was no longer a source of torment, but a tribute to the talent of the unknown artist. The whispers ceased, and the dream stopped. The man in the painting no longer haunted her. With her conscience clear, Emily returned to her own work, her passion for painting rekindled. She continued to create, knowing that while fame and recognition were fleeting, the true value of art lay in the connection it created between souls, across time, across space, and even across death. The lost painting had found its place in the world, and so had she.
Thanks for watching Bit Tales. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Ring the bell to get notified whenever we post new tales. Your support helps us keep the stories coming.